Hey everybody, Kendall with BlackOvis. I'm here with my friend Dirk Durham from Phelps Game Calls. We're psyched to have you here. Thanks for making the trip down from Boise.
Yeah, thanks.
We're here for an event that we're doing tonight, but wanted to talk about two different types of elk calls. Primarily, the question that I'm having as I look across your line is I want to talk about bugles and why what's the difference between each of these three bugle tubes, and what are the situations or why would you choose one over other? Maybe let's talk about each one individually and then dive into the use case, if you will. Because I'm sure there's plenty of guys like me that I'm not a great elk caller, and oftentimes I'm like, give me that tube. That looks interesting.
Sure.
Why would someone choose, this tube, or the long one there?
Sure. We can go with the Unleashed tube first.
Yep.
This is the OG tube of our bugle tubes. This thing's been out for several years. The one thing that people like about this tube a lot is it's got a really large mouthpiece area here.
That's what attracted me to that particular tube.
Right. If you look at the Renegade has a little smaller tube. My personal preference, I like a small one just the way I blow air through the tube and put my lips on there. Other people like a larger mouthpiece.
Do you think it's harder? Is it harder? I mean, I'm saying harder, but do people find it, like beginners, let's say, harder to have a smaller opening, like on the Renegade versus on the Unleashed?
I think so. I think beginners like a larger opening. Just it feels a lot easier. And then if you want to do some like more advanced type calls, then it's a lot easier to put your lips on there and buzz them, and to do that like that lip ball call where you buzz your lips. It's a lot easier to do that for beginners on a bigger mouthpiece than it is on a smaller mouthpiece.
It's almost like you have more space for your lips to be able to manipulate or move.
Yeah, definitely.
Versus on a smaller one like the Renegade.
Right. I find my lips kind of move in like on the inside of this a little bit here and have a lot more free movement. Where on the outside, then I don't have as much of that, but it's more controlled for me. So yeah. I'm used to that kind of a style of a call. So that's why I prefer a smaller call.
Differences here on this too, on the Renegade versus the Unleashed, is on this one obviously it's longer. You've got the similar kind of ribbing in the tube itself, but on the upper you've got these different rings here. Any performance difference that you hear? Like if you hear, let's say Jason's across the canyon, can you understand, like if he blew on the Renegade or blew on the Unleashed, would you be able to notice a difference because of the sound?
I probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference of the sound, but an operator will kind of feel the difference when they blow the call. With the shorter neck on this one, I like a little shorter one because it fits in my pack better. Okay. That way it goes through the brush a lot easier. You're not getting hung up on trees and stuff. Whereas a little longer one, then you have to be a little more mindful of it. But one thing too is with this longer gap right here, it creates a little bit more back pressure, if you will. So back pressure means the more air you put in the tube, the more air that is retained into the tube.
Okay.
So
instead of going out the tube, it's actually it's reverberating within the tube itself.
Right,
okay,
right.
I see.
The air kind of curls around in the very end of the tube. And what happens is, like if you were to take a baseball bat, like a plastic baseball bat, and cut both ends off, which it sounds pretty good to a degree, but you have to put a ton of air to get the sounds, and it also kind of sounds flat. You don't get really good note articulation. You don't get that do, 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 do. You don't get the staircase of notes as easy, which this one gets you up the staircase of notes a little easier with that a little bit longer, just because you have more surface more back pressure.
Super interesting.
Right.
This bugle on the end, what is this particular bugle, and why would I gravitate towards this? It is shorter, and like you were kind of saying, it may be more convenient for packing around, but it is heavier. Talk a little about this tube right here.
So these two are made out of plastic. This one's made out of metal. So this is our patented metal bugle tube. So it starts its life as a piece of aluminum, and they smash it out and turn it into a tube, and then it comes with a replaceable mouthpiece.
Super interesting.
So you can get that same size flared mouthpiece that's on the Unleashed. Or for folks who can't use a diaphragm, they can put this easy bugler on there and put it on there, and then instead of getting that gag reflex or that tickle, they can just use their lip to bugle with. So, and then also that metal bugle tube, it has a lot sharper tone than the plastic ones do. whenever you hit that high note, that high pitch note, it just really broadcasts that high pitch note at a very piercing hertz. There's some nerd talk about it that Jason can talk about, but there's a specific, it hits a specific hertz and amplifies that hertz a lot better than plastic tubes do.
Interesting. Do you, when you hear this bugle, the metal tube, do you notice, like, you notice a difference between
I
that?
do.
Okay.
I do. If we were standing across, 100 yards apart or 200 yards apart, I would definitely hear a difference. And Jason's been using this one a lot. I like this one just because it's got that smaller mouthpiece. That's just a preferred preference. Jason's been using this metal one a lot ever since it's come out. And when he gets out there at a distance, it sounds really good. It has a lot of elk type sounds to it. It's good. Where this one, the plastic ones have a little bit of a little plasticky sound,
like a ring,
a little bit of different ring to it. This one has a more natural type sound, so you can definitely tell a difference.
Do you think closer in, it's not as good? Because you just were talking about when you get farther out.
Even up close,
Okay.
yeah, it sounds great. And then another thing to think about too, let's say you're chasing a bull one day and you spook him off and you're using diaphragms, but maybe he didn't smell you or whatever, but maybe he saw you, and you want to kind of go after him again the next day. What a guy can do is swap out your heads here. Okay. You're going to have a different sound profile by using that external bugle mouthpiece, and maybe you'll get another chance at him.
That is super interesting, and I know that some guys, when I got into elk hunting 10, 12 years ago, I really felt kind of lame because I couldn't really blow the diaphragm calls, and so I used a couple different bugles that had that. I've gotten better, and I feel like I can utilize the diaphragm now. Have you used this particular like easy blower? Do you always use a diaphragm? Because I'm kind of wondering on the kind of the cool factor, or is it just like, man, don't worry about the fact that you can't blow a diaphragm. Take advantage of this kind of technology or this design.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We've got tons of feedback from customers that have bought this, went to the field, and they said, they've always wanted to call elk, but they just couldn't do it or do it.
Felt embarrassed or didn't
they didn't have the
like,
confidence.
Oh man, I'm not going to do very well.
Right. And after a little bit of practice, they were able to do it, and they were like, one guy, he had tongue cancer. He had cancer in his mouth, and he had to have his tongue removed, and he couldn't use a diaphragm.
Way.
And he went out. He was able to go out with his dad and call in a bull with this because we have this because it's operated by putting it on your lip. So he was just jacked. He was finally able to get back in the game.
That's amazing. The real quickly before we end on this, would you demonstrate like each one? Mm-hmm. Not, I mean, since we're indoors, it's not going to be very, very different. It might not be discernible, the differences here. But why don't you blow on each one,
sure.
And just see if we can notice the differences.
You bet. So we'll go head to head with the Renegade and the Unleashed first.
I didn't hear much of a difference.
Not too much difference, but as a user experience, you do definitely feel it. It's
You're
like,
feeling something different.
I'm feeling it. I'm getting up that octave of notes, that climbing that staircase of notes, a lot quicker and with a lot less air pressure than I am with something like
with
this.
The Unleashed.
With the Renegade.
Okay.
Yeah. This one climbs the staircase better.
Yep. Okay.
And then now with the metal one, we'll do a comparison between the Renegade and the metal. Now, one thing you kind of notice, the plastic tube has a little more thump. Mm-hmm. It's on the low end, it's got a little bit more thump, but on the high end, it's a little bit more of a piercing sound with that metal tube.
It almost reminds me of like if you were listening to a concert or someone that had a really solid voice. Mm-hmm. That's what I would say here, and maybe someone that wasn't quite as dialed. Because I could certainly, this sounded just beautiful,
right?
And this one sounded like it was just a little off pitch, but still a great sound, of course. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you've killed enough elk that I'm sure you can make anything happen with any one of these bugles. But it's interesting to hear that the Renegade is your go-to.
Yeah, and one more cool factor with the metal tube, it's got the neoprene cover on it. So a lot of folks complain, they're like, these big plastic tubes are noisy when you go through the brush because they're hollow sounding, but with that metal tube and this neoprene cover, it's just silent.
Yeah.
So
very interesting. Well, Dirk, thanks for going through these bugle tubes from Phelps Game Calls. We carry the entire line of Phelps Game Calls here on BlackOvis. We're excited to have you here coming for the event tonight. We appreciate you coming by and having this conversation about bugle tubes. If you guys need anything else elk related from Phelps Game Calls besides bugle tubes, again, check it out on blackovis.com.